The crack of gunfire echoed across the plains as the stagecoach rattled to a sudden halt, dust billowing around the wooden wheels like a desert storm. Bethany Kane gripped the edge of her seat, her wedding dress crumpling beneath her sweaty palms as pain shot through her broken leg. The splint her father had hastily fashioned before their journey did little to ease her suffering as the coach jerked to a stop. "Everybody out," a gruff voice commanded from outside. "This here's a robbery." Bethany's heart hammered against her ribs as her fellow passengers, her uncle, two businessmen from Boston, and an elderly woman exchanged terrified glances. Her intended husband, Harold Wilcox, was supposed to meet her in Silverton, Colorado, where they would finally marry after 2 years of correspondence. Now, as the door to the stagecoach swung open, revealing 3 masked men with revolvers, she feared she might never make it to the altar. "Come on, folks, we ain't got all day," one of the bandits barked, waving his gun impatiently. "Valuables in the bag, then you can be on your way." As the other passengers reluctantly climbed down, Bethany remained frozen in her seat, her splinted leg extended awkwardly before her. "Miss, did you hear me? Get out of the coach," the bandit repeated, his voice hardening as he stepped closer. "She can't," her uncle explained, his voice quavering. "She's broken her leg. We're taking her to Silverton to be married." The bandit's eyes narrowed beneath his mask. "Well, ain't that a shame, but we ain't got time for cripples slowing us down." He turned to his companions. "Take what they got, then let's move on. Leave the girl." Panic clawed at Bethany's throat. "You can't leave me here, please." But her pleas fell on deaf ears as the bandits collected the passengers' valuables and forced the driver to unhitch the horses. "What about my niece?" her uncle protested weakly, but the barrel of a revolver pressed against his temple silenced any further objections. "She's your problem, old man," the bandit leader sneered. "But we're taking the horses and coach. You folks can walk to the next town. It's only about 15 miles east." 15 miles. The words hung in the air like a death sentence as Bethany watched the bandits force her uncle and the other passengers to start walking, leaving her alone in the disabled coach. "Uncle Henry," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Don't leave me," her uncle turned, his face a mask of anguish. "I'll send help, Bethany, I promise." As the group disappeared over a distant ridge, Bethany was left alone on the vast plains of eastern Colorado, the September sun of 1876 beating down relentlessly on the abandoned coach. Her wedding dress, once pristine and white, was now creased and dusty. The small canteen of water beside her would last a day at most, and her leg broken when she'd fallen from her father's porch just 3 days before throbbed mercilessly beneath its crude splint. She had insisted on continuing the journey despite her father's objections. Her fiancé was expecting her, and after 2 years of correspondence, she couldn't bear to disappoint him. Now, as she sat alone in the disabled coach, she wondered if her stubbornness would be the death of her. As the afternoon sun began its descent, Bethany's fear gave way to exhaustion. She dozed fitfully, waking with a start at every distant sound: a coyote's howl, the rustle of prairie grass in the wind, the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. When she opened her eyes to the golden light of sunset, a silhouette appeared on the horizon, a rider, approaching steadily. Hope and fear battled within her chest. Was it a rescuer? Or perhaps one of the bandits returning to finish what they had started? As the figure drew closer, she could make out a tall man atop a chestnut stallion. His broad shoulders were draped with a dust-covered duster, and a worn Stetson shaded his face. A rifle was slung across his back, and a revolver hung at his hip. A cowboy, he reined in his horse beside the coach and dismounted with fluid grace, approaching cautiously. "Hello," he called. "Anyone in there?" "Yes," Bethany cried, her voice cracking with relief. "I'm here, please help me." The cowboy appeared in the doorway, and Bethany found herself staring into the most striking blue eyes she had ever seen. They stood out vividly against his sun-bronzed face, which was partially shadowed by the brim of his hat. "What happened here, miss?" he asked, his voice deep and tinged with concern. Bandits, she explained, the words tumbling out in a rush. They took the horses and made the others walk to town. They left me behind because of my leg. His gaze fell to her splinted limb and his frown deepened. You're hurt. It's broken. I was on my way to Silverton to be married. The cowboy's expression softened slightly. Well, you picked a mighty inconvenient time to break your leg, Miss Kane. Bethany Kane. Miss Kane. He removed his hat, revealing thick, sandy hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. Quinn Frost, at your service. Most folks call me Quinn. Thank you for stopping, Mr. Frost, Bethany said, relief washing over her. My uncle promised to send help, but I feared it might be too late by then. Quinn studied the abandoned coach, then glanced at the sun hanging low in the western sky. Night's coming soon, and these plains get mighty cold after dark. We need to get you somewhere safe. The nearest town is too far to reach before nightfall, he finished for her. I've got a camp set up about 2 miles back. Not much, but it's got a fire and shelter. We can head there for the night, then figure out our next steps in the morning. Bethany hesitated. The prospect of spending the night alone with a stranger, even one who seemed to be offering help, went against everything she had been taught about propriety. Yet what choice did she have? I suppose that would be best, she conceded. Quinn nodded, then glanced at her wedding dress. You got anything else to wear? That fancy dress ain't exactly suited for rough travel. I have a small valise, she said, pointing to the bag at her feet. It has a day dress and some necessities. Good, I'll help you change into something more practical, then we'll be on our way. Bethany's cheeks flamed. You most certainly will not help me change, a hint of a smile tugged at Quinn's lips. I meant I'll help you by giving you privacy, Miss Kane. I'll step outside while you change, then help you onto my horse. Feeling foolish, Bethany nodded. Thank you, that would be appropriate. True to his word, Quinn turned his back and left the coach while Bethany struggled out of her wedding gown and into a simple blue cotton dress. The process was agonizing with her broken leg, but she managed, calling out to Quinn when she was decent. He helped her down from the coach with gentle efficiency, his strong arms careful not to jostle her injured limb. Then, with surprising tenderness, he lifted her onto his horse, positioning her sideways in the saddle. Hold tight, he instructed, mounting behind her and reaching around to grasp the reins. It won't be the most comfortable ride, but it's not far. As they rode away from the abandoned coach, Bethany found herself acutely aware of the solid warmth of Quinn's chest against her back, his arms encircling her as he guided the horse across the open plains. The sky was painted with the vibrant hues of sunset, casting long shadows across the prairie grass. How did you come to be out here alone, Mr. Frost? She asked, partly to distract herself from the pain in her leg and partly from genuine curiosity about her rescuer. I'm a scout, he replied. I guide wagon trains and survey routes for the railroads. Was heading back to Fort Collins after mapping some terrain for the Denver Pacific when I spotted your coach. Then I'm fortunate you came along when you did. Seems so. His voice was non-committal, but she felt him adjust his grip to secure her more comfortably against him. When they reached his camp, Bethany saw that it was simple but well-organized, a small tent, a fire pit with embers still glowing, and supplies neatly arranged under a canvas tarp. Quinn dismounted first, then carefully lifted her from the saddle, carrying her to a bedroll spread near the fire. It's not much, he said apologetically, but it's better than spending the night in that coach. It's perfect, Bethany assured him, surprising herself with how much she meant it. After the terror of being abandoned on the plains, Quinn's modest camp seemed like a haven. He rekindled the fire, then checked her splint with practiced hands. This was poorly done, he observed, frowning at the crude binding. I've seen enough injuries in my time to know this won't heal right if it stays like this. Before she could protest, he was retrieving supplies from his saddlebag's straight branches for better splints, clean bandages, and a small bottle. Whiskey? She asked, eyeing the amber liquid warily. For the pain, he explained. I need to reset this properly and it's going to hurt like the devil, Bethany swallowed hard. Is that necessary? Quinn's blue eyes met hers directly. If you want to walk normally again, yes. She took a deep breath, then accepted the bottle, taking a small sip that burned all the way down her throat. Do what you must, Mr. Frost. Quinn worked with surprising gentleness, his large hands deft and sure as they manipulated her injured leg. Despite the whiskey, pain shot through her like lightning when he repositioned the bone, and she cried out, gripping his forearm with white-knuckled intensity. Almost done, he murmured, his voice a soothing rumble as he secured the new splint with firm bandages. You're doing well, Miss Kane. Braver than most men I've tended to. When he finished, he helped her sit up and offered her a tin cup of coffee. As they sat beside the fire, the vast expanse of stars appearing overhead, Bethany found herself studying Quinn's profile. In the flickering light, she could see that he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 28 or 29, only a few years older than her 23 years. Where did you learn to tend injuries like that? She asked. War, he said simply. Served with the Union cavalry. You learn fast when your friends' lives depend on it, she nodded, sensing there was more to the story but unwilling to press. I'm grateful for your skills, Mr. Frost, and for your kindness in helping a stranger. Couldn't very well leave you out there, he replied. Besides, my ma raised me better than that. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Now, tell me about this fiancé you're heading to meet. Bethany hesitated, suddenly finding it difficult to summon Harold's face in her mind. His name is Harold Wilcox. He owns a mercantile in Silverton. We've been corresponding for 2 years after he placed an advertisement seeking a bride. Quinn raised an eyebrow. A mail-order arrangement? Not exactly, she defended. We exchanged many letters before I agreed to come west. My father's farm in Missouri hasn't been the same since the war, and with 5 younger sisters, there weren't many prospects for me there. So you've never met this Harold in person? No, she admitted, but his letters were kind and thoughtful. He seemed suitable. Suitable? Quinn repeated, the word hanging between them like a question. Not exactly how most folks describe the person they're planning to spend their life with. Bethany felt a flush rise to her cheeks. Not everyone has the luxury of marrying for passion, Mr. Frost. Some of us must make practical choices. He nodded slowly, poking at the fire with a stick. Fair enough, Miss Kane. I didn't mean to judge. They lapsed into silence, the crackling of the fire and the distant cry of coyotes the only sounds breaking the stillness of the prairie night. Eventually, Quinn insisted she take the tent while he slept by the fire. I'll not have your reputation compromised on my account, he said firmly when she protested that she was already imposing enough. Besides, I'm used to sleeping under the stars. As Bethany lay in Quinn's tent that night, wrapped in his blankets that smelled of leather and pine, she found herself thinking not of Harold Wilcox and the security he represented, but of the blue-eyed cowboy sleeping just a few yards away, a man who had carried her from danger without hesitation, who had tended her wounds with gentle hands, and who had looked at her not with pity, but with respect. Morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight filtering through the canvas of the tent. Bethany awoke to the aroma of coffee and bacon. When she emerged from the tent, she found Quinn crouched by the fire, cooking breakfast in a cast-iron skillet. Morning, Miss Kane, he greeted her, tipping his hat. Hope you're hungry. Famished, she admitted, realizing she hadn't eaten since the previous morning, and please, after everything, I think you can call me Bethany. A smile touched his lips. Bethany, then. They shared a simple meal, and as they ate, Quinn outlined his plan. Silverton's still a good 100 miles southwest of here, across some rough country. With your leg, that journey would be dangerous right now. But Harold is expecting me, Bethany protested, and my uncle and the others, they'll be worried. There's a settlement about 20 miles east Riverbend, Quinn explained. It's small, but they've got a doctor who can see to your leg properly. More importantly, they've got a telegraph. We can send word to your uncle and your fiancé that you're safe. Bethany considered this. The idea of delaying her arrival in Silverton, delaying her wedding, brought a curious mix of relief and guilt. "You're right, of course. That seems the wisest course." Quinn nodded, looking pleased. "We'll break camp and head out soon. The ride will be uncomfortable, but we should reach Riverbend by nightfall if we keep a steady pace." As Quinn packed up the camp, Bethany watched him work, noting the efficient way he moved, the quiet competence in every action. When it came time to depart, he carried her to his horse as effortlessly as if she weighed nothing, settling her in the saddle before mounting behind her. The journey to Riverbend was indeed uncomfortable, the horse's gait sending jolts of pain through Bethany's broken leg, despite Quinn's efforts to maintain a smooth ride. Yet there was something undeniably comforting about being held secure in his arms, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing against her back. They talked intermittently throughout the day, Quinn pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his travels, Bethany telling him about her life in Missouri and her sister's antics. As the hours passed, she found herself laughing more than she had in years, the pain in her leg becoming secondary to the unexpected pleasure of Quinn's company. By late afternoon, the landscape began to change, the flat plains giving way to rolling hills. In the distance, nestled along a winding river, the small settlement of Riverbend came into view, a cluster of wooden buildings, a church steeple, and scattered homesteads. "Not much to look at," Quinn said, "but they're good folk. Dr. Adams is skilled, was an army surgeon during the war." As they rode into town, their unusual appearance, a woman in a day dress sitting sideways before a trail-worn cowboy, drew curious stares from the townspeople. Quinn guided his horse directly to a modest building with a sign reading Dr. J. Adams, physician. The doctor, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, examined Bethany's leg while Quinn waited outside. "Your friend did a fine job with this splint," Dr. Adams commented. "Military-trained, I'd wager." "Yes," Bethany confirmed. "He served in the cavalry, thought as much." "Well, the break is clean, and he said it properly. You're fortunate he found you left untreated much longer. This could have become quite serious." When Quinn returned, the doctor addressed him directly. "She needs at least 4 weeks of rest before attempting any significant travel, Mr. Frost." "That bone needs time to knit properly," Quinn nodded solemnly. "Is there a hotel in town where Miss Kane can stay?" "There's Mrs. Hollister's boarding house," Dr. Adams suggested. "She takes in the occasional boarder, though I should warn you she runs a respectable establishment." "That's precisely what we need," Bethany assured him, after sending telegrams to her uncle and to Harold explaining her situation. And the necessary delay, Quinn escorted Bethany to the boarding house, a well-maintained 2-story home at the edge of town. Mrs. Hollister, a plump widow with sharp eyes and a warm smile, showed them to a small but clean room on the first floor. "This will be perfect, thank you," Bethany said, as Quinn carefully set her down on the bed. Mrs. Hollister looked between them with thinly veiled curiosity. "And will you be needing a room as well, Mr. Frost?" Quinn shook his head. "No, madam, I'll find lodging at the livery or the saloon." Something like disappointment flickered through Bethany, though she quickly suppressed it. Of course Quinn wouldn't stay. He had already gone above and beyond in helping her, she couldn't expect more. "Well then," Mrs. Hollister said, "dinner's at 6 sharp. Don't be late or you'll go hungry till breakfast." When the landlady left, an awkward silence fell between them. Quinn cleared his throat. "I should be going." "Let you get settled?" "Yes, of course," Bethany said quickly. "You've done more than enough, Mr. Frost." "Quinn, I don't know how to thank you." He shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his hat. "No thanks needed. Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly, "not anyone. What you did carrying me from that coach, tending my injury, bringing me all this way, that's not something just anyone would do." A hint of color touched his tanned cheeks. "Well, either way, you're safe now. Doctor will look after your leg, and once you're healed, you can continue on to Silverton." "To your fiancé." The word fiancé hung in the air between them, reminding Bethany of the reality that awaited her once her leg healed. "Will you?" She began, then faltered. "That is, are you staying in Riverbend long?" Quinn met her eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. "I've got no pressing business elsewhere. Thought I might stay a spell, make sure you're settling in all right." Relief and something warmer flooded through her. "I'd like that. Then I'll call on you tomorrow if that's agreeable." "Very agreeable," she confirmed with a smile. True to his word, Quinn appeared at the boarding house the next morning, hat in hand and freshly shaved. He had procured a pair of crutches from the doctor and spent the morning teaching Bethany how to use them. His hands steady and supportive as she tentatively made her way around her room, then out onto the boarding house porch. The days that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Each morning, Quinn would arrive after breakfast, and they would spend the day together, sometimes simply sitting on the porch talking, other times venturing slowly around town as Bethany gained confidence with her crutches. In the evenings, Quinn would join her and Mrs. Hollister for dinner, before bidding her good night and returning to his room at the livery. As the first week passed, then the second, Bethany found herself looking forward to Quinn's arrival each day with increasing anticipation. They spoke of everything and nothing: her childhood in Missouri, his years scouting the frontier, books they had read, places they hoped to see. She learned that beneath his quiet exterior lay a sharp mind and dry wit that never failed to make her laugh. And sometimes, when their conversations lulled into comfortable silence, she would catch him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. Harold's reply to her telegram arrived during her second week in Riverbend, a brief message expressing concern for her well-being and assuring her that their wedding could wait until she was fully recovered. Yet Bethany found that thoughts of her fiancé and her impending marriage had receded to the periphery of her mind, overshadowed by the immediate presence of Quinn Frost in her daily life. It was during her third week in Riverbend, as they sat on a bench overlooking the river, that Quinn finally asked the question that had been hovering unspoken between them. "Are you still planning to go through with it, marrying this Harold fellow?" Bethany stared at the water rippling past, considering her answer carefully. "I made a commitment," she said finally. "He's expecting me. He's prepared a home for us." "That's not what I asked," Quinn said softly, his blue eyes intent on her face. "I asked if you want to marry him." "I barely know you, Quinn," she whispered, not meeting his gaze. "You barely know Harold either," he pointed out. "Yet you were willing to bind your life to his based on some letters. That's different. We had an understanding, an arrangement. And what about us?" Quinn asked, his voice low and serious. "These past weeks, has that just been kindness on your part, gratitude for helping you?" Bethany finally turned to face him, her heart pounding. "No, you know it hasn't been just that." Quinn reached out, his calloused fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then stay. Stay here in Riverbend, or come with me when I head out again. I can't offer you a mercantile or a fancy house, but I can promise you won't ever be just a suitable match to me." "Quinn," she breathed, caught between longing and obligation. "I can't simply abandon my commitment. What would that make me?" "Honest," he said simply. "It would make you honest, Bethany, more honest than going through with a marriage to a man you don't love while your heart is elsewhere." Before she could respond, he leaned forward and kissed her a gentle, questioning kiss that nonetheless sent warmth spreading through her entire body. When he pulled back, his eyes searching hers, Bethany knew with sudden clarity that she could never marry Harold Wilcox, not after knowing what it felt like to be truly seen and wanted by Quinn Frost. "I need to write to Harold," she said softly. "He deserves the truth." Quinn nodded, a tentative smile touching his lips. "And what truth is that exactly?" "That I've fallen in love with the cowboy who carried me across the plains," she said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "That sometimes fate works in unexpected ways." "That I'm sorry, but I can't marry him." Quinn's smile broadened, transforming his entire face. Are you certain, Bethany? I'm not a wealthy man. Life with me won't always be easy. I've never been more certain of anything, she replied, reaching for his hand. Easy doesn't matter. What matters is being with someone who sees me as more than just suitable, someone who makes me laugh, who challenges me, who makes me feel alive. Quinn pulled her into his arms, mindful of her splinted leg, and kissed her again, more deeply this time. A kiss full of promise and passion that left them both breathless. The letter to Harold Wilcox was sent the following day, a sincere but firm explanation of her change of heart. Her uncle, who had made it safely to Denver and had been planning to escort her to Silverton once she was healed, expressed surprise but not disapproval when she wrote to inform him of her decision. "He sounds like a fine man, this Quinn Frost," her uncle wrote back. "Any fellow who would carry my niece across the plains rather than leave her stranded has my respect. Your father might take more convincing, but I suspect seeing you happy will win him over in time." As the 4th week of her convalescence drew to a close, Dr. Adams removed the splint and pronounced her leg healed, though he cautioned her to avoid strenuous activity for another few weeks. That evening, as they sat on their favorite bench by the river, Quinn took her hand in his. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've saved enough from my scouting work to buy a small parcel of land. There's a homestead available just outside of town, nothing fancy, but it's got good water and fertile soil. We could build something there if you wanted, or we could travel if that suits you better. I just know I don't want to be without you, Bethany Kane." "Are you asking me to marry you, Quinn Frost?" she asked, her heart soaring. He smiled, reaching into his pocket and producing a simple silver band. "I am. Not because it's suitable or practical, but because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Because these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. Because I want to build a future with you, wherever that might lead us." Tears welled in Bethany's eyes as she nodded, words momentarily beyond her. Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, his kiss sealing their promise to each other. They were married 2 weeks later in Riverbend's small church, with Mrs. Hollister, Dr. Adams, and the handful of townspeople who had come to know them as witnesses. Bethany wore a simple white dress ordered from Denver rather than the elaborate wedding gown she had abandoned in the stagecoach. As they spoke their vows, she reflected on how differently her life had turned out from what she had planned, and how infinitely more wonderful it was. After the ceremony, Quinn carried her across the threshold of their new home, a modest cabin that they would expand over time, already filled with books and the necessities they had selected together. As he set her down carefully in the center of their new home, his blue eyes bright with love, Bethany knew that the broken leg that had seemed like such a disaster had actually been the greatest blessing of her life. "Welcome home, Mrs. Frost," Quinn murmured, drawing her into his arms. "I've been home since the moment you found me," she replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss her husband. "You carried me not just across the plains, Quinn, but into a life I never dared to dream of." Outside their window, the sun set over the Colorado plains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, a fitting beginning to their unexpected love story, born of adversity but destined for joy. 5 years later, as they stood on the porch of their expanded homestead watching their young son and daughter play in the yard, Bethany leaned against Quinn's solid warmth, grateful for the twist of fate that had led her to true love rather than mere suitability. The mail-order bride with the broken leg had found her home not in the arms of a stranger she knew only through letters, but in the heart of the cowboy who had carried her across the plains and into a life filled with love, laughter, and the kind of happiness that can only come from finding one's perfect match in the most unexpected of circumstances.